and go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for Money Management, a discussion with women. My name is Ava Dangerfield.
And my name is Amanda Doss.
And Michelle here, Michelle Mayers, and we are the founders of M.I.S.C, which stands for Motivating, Inspiring, and Servicing Communities. And our overall goal is to really just support our community, support everyone that we can by providing workshops and various topics. Our mission is to do exactly what our name stands for, to motivate and inspire through promoting various like workshops, the event spaces, and giving opportunities to network for other professionals as well as youth in our community. I'll hand it over to Amanda.
Yeah, so absolutely another nugget. If you could save the date for our first professional networking event, July 10th, put that on your calendar. Make sure you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and visit our website here below so that you can stay up to date on what we have coming up. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. We are humbled and grateful for him to lend his time and his knowledge to us today for the duration. So his name is Ricardo Thomas. He is a graduate of Loyola University, where he earned his Bachelor of Business Administration degree in finance. He is registered financial consultant and a chartered federal employee benefits consultant. He is fully licensed. He is a fully licensed investment broker, in which he achieved at a tender age of 19. He is a practicing financial consultant and is the president of Thomas-Waddell and Associates, which is a financial consulting and asset management firm with clients across the country. He has worked in a divorce financial analyst and served as an expert witness and consulted on divorce cases where expert opinions were needed on divorce settlements. In addition to all of that, he is a former adjunct instructor at Delgado Community College in New Orleans, where he taught for over 10 years. And the courses were on economics of divorce as it pertains to women. His work in the area of divorce has been featured in the Times Picayune. Ooh, I'm pronouncing that all wrong.
That's correct.
Oh, Picayune. Okay, New Orleans. Picayune, New Orleans, City Business, and New Orleans Tribune newspapers, Barnes and Noble's bookstore, as well as other publications around the country. He is also involved in the community by serving as a board member for Goodwill Industries of Southeastern Louisiana. He is the Urban League of Louisiana. Oh, he's also involved in the Urban League of Louisiana and WWNO radio station. There is a whole host of other things that I can say about his wealth of knowledge and 37 years of experience, but we'll be on this call all day and we don't want to do that. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Ricardo.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, ladies of M.I.S.C, and thank all of the attendees this evening. Again, it is a pleasure to be with you all to continue with the series of events or programs that you've put together as it relates to money management, and I should say specifically as it relates to different areas or perspectives as it relates to money management. As you can see on the slide, tonight we're going to approach it from a different angle. We're going to talk about the ABCs of financially surviving divorce. Okay, so in the past, when we've done a variety of the different sessions, we've talked about the importance of retirement planning, and we've talked about the importance of investing and getting the best return on your money and understanding how money works and so forth. So we're really now going to take it to the next level and talk about money as it impacts relationships. Okay, and we're going to start all the way from the beginning, before it even gets into the marriage, before it even gets to that day of trepidation. We're going to first start talking about financial planning before marriage. Okay, so again, thank you all for being here. And we do have a wealth of resources available. We'll talk about that in the Q&A session at the end. And I want to start with this. And please feel free to enter information into the chat for everyone who's on here. I'd like to get your feedback on it. And I do have one question that I'm going to ask before I ask the question that's on the screen. So we all talk about it, being married, or I should say most people talk about being married and so forth. But does anyone know, besides the ones who I shared this with the other night, does anyone know what percentage of first marriages end in divorce? And you can take a guess at it and put it in the chat. Feel free, anyone, put your number in there. What percentage of first marriages end in divorce? Is it 5%, 10%, 2%, 12%? Somebody, okay? I see some people saying 50%, 70%. Wow, anybody else? 57%. I see she wants to split the difference in here. This is not The Price is Right. Okay. But actually, so check this out. 50% of all first marriages end in divorce. Okay, so as we stand here in the United States today, basically half of us are going to experience this, including myself, been there, done that. 50% of all first marriages end in divorce for a variety of reasons, which we're going to get into in a minute. So my question is, okay, so realize that the statistics tell us that 50% of all first marriages end in divorce. And we all know folks that say, I'm not going to do that again, or I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, or I'm going to go into it with my eyes open, and all these other cliches we hear. So then my question now to the audience is, what percentage of second marriages end in divorce? Because remember, now we have experience under our belt. We know what to look for. We know what things to avoid. So what percentage of second marriages end in divorce? So I see 20%, 30%. Anybody else? Anybody else want to jump in on this? Okay, 40%. Well, the statistics, unfortunately, are 60% of all second marriages end in divorce. So remember, 50% of all the first marriages end in divorce, and now 60% of all second marriages end in divorce. So what's the moral of the story? We didn't learn anything from the first time. Unfortunately, we tend to make the same mistakes twice. Okay? And so here's the thing. So I wanted to put that out there just to provide a little bit of perspective for our foundation for what we're going to talk about tonight as it relates to the intersection of divorce and money, divorce and finances. So now to the question that I have on the screen, and I would really like for everybody to participate in this one, and you can put your answers in the chat. No particular order. So now we know 50% of all first marriages end in divorce. We don't do any better the second time around. And I refuse to go into the third statistic, the third round of marriages. So we're going to just stop with the first and second time. But here's my question to the audience. What are the top 3 reasons for divorce? And please put those in the chat. Again, in no particular order. What are the top 3 reasons why folks get a divorce? And whatever you think it is. I see somebody said stay single. That could be good advice, certainly in some circumstances. Okay. Finances, we see infidelities, baby mama issues. Any others? Any others? Communication, okay? So you just about hit all of them, and there's an obvious one that you left out there. That's because we want to be shy. So the top 3 reasons that folks get into divorce. And of course, now she's cheating and took my hint and put that one in there. So she's disqualified. But yeah, the top 3 reasons, and they're all interrelated, that folks get divorced are finances. And again, no particular order. Finances, lack of communication, or the way they say it when you go to court, lack of consortium. And it's all interrelated. Okay, yeah, write that down, consortium. That's the politically correct way to say it. So, and like I said, it's all interrelated, because if the money ain't right, are you in the mood? If you're not communicating right, are you in the mood? Okay. And if the money ain't right, then you ain't talking anyway. So you see how they all are interrelated? Those are typically the top 3 reasons for people getting a divorce. So now, again, we're building, we're going somewhere with this. So let's move forward. Now, take a look at the key areas that I put on the screen here, especially for those of you who may be taking notes. So what we're going to try to cover in our time tonight is, first, financial planning, or the importance thereof before marriage, financial planning during marriage. If you end up, unfortunately, having to get a divorce, realize that it is not a cheap prospect. It is expensive on a variety of levels, not just financially. And of course, if you're going down that pathway of divorce, if it's imminent, you have to plan. You can't do this from the seat of your pants, because there are dire consequences, both financially, emotional, and otherwise, when you don't prepare for it. And contrary to what a lot of folks say, which is totally false, when you get a divorce, that does not have anything to do with the property settlement. It has absolutely nothing to do with the child custody or child support issues. All of those are 3 separate issues, which we will talk about. Then, of course, we're going to talk about the division of assets, as I just mentioned, support issues. What about post-divorce health care? You know, if you were married and you were being carried on your spouse's health plan on the job, what happens now? Or vice versa, okay? What about post-divorce retirement planning? Okay, if your spouse perhaps was making the lion's share of the income, and the lifestyle that you all had planned to have was based on having that retirement plan in place and so forth, that's now out of the picture. So what are you going to do? And then we're going to try to round it out with financial and tax considerations in remarriage. Because what I like to remind folks all the time, and especially when I was doing work in this area, you know, the number one thing I had to remind people of was that the fact that the 2 of you are getting a divorce. You and MasterCard are not getting a divorce. You and Saks Fifth Avenue are not getting a divorce. You and the mortgage company are not getting a divorce. Where am I going with this? They still want their money. Those issues are there. And remember, in many cases, a lot of these liabilities were created at a time when there was both incomes. Now, all of a sudden, you're going your separate ways. What happens? We're going to talk about that, okay? So these are the key areas: financial planning before marriage, and then just follow the list on through, okay? So now, as you see on the screen, we see the money, we see the rings, and you're just about at the point where he or she is proposing, because I'm putting this out here, you're recording this, so guys may watch this too. And keep in mind that the things that I'm sharing with you cut equally both ways, okay? And I had to really stress this when I was teaching the class at the college here some years ago. You know, some of the ladies who registered to take the class, you know, were kind of vindictive and was looking to get even and get back at them. And, you know, I had to quickly tell them, well, first of all, this is not a class for that, but remember, the ball bounces both ways. It's equal on both sides. So when we're talking about financial planning before the marriage, it is important to have the conversation. And unfortunately, I can tell you from the many classes that I've done to the many cases that I've worked on, this is the area that somehow, no matter how long you've dated this person, that you never talked about or you never paid attention to. And I don't see how that happened. People laugh when I mention, and all of this is true, that when I got married and proposed, one of the first things I asked for both of us was a credit report. And that's real, oh, absolutely, because I wanted to know what I was getting involved in. But even before that, before even getting to that and proposing, you should be looking at their money behaviors, okay? If every month they're coming around, they're telling you they got to pay a late fee on the rent, ding, 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 that's a sign, okay? If every other month they're coming to you and saying, oh, I'm running a little short, can you help a brother out? And I'm saying that because we got all ladies here, but it goes both ways. I'm gonna pick on the ladies in a minute. And I can do this because I'm far away in New Orleans, so y'all can't get me. but it cuts both ways. So you really have to have that conversation and talk to this individual, you know, about their finances, their philosophies. Sometimes you will find out that you all are not on the same page. And as a result, it's a serious problem, okay? You know, suppose you find out that they say, well, you know, I was really thinking about quitting working once we got married because you make good money, so I'm gonna be a house husband. You probably want to know that beforehand. See, I wish all of you were on camera right now so I could see the facial expressions when I say these crazy things. But this happens out here. I've had situations like that. You know, so some of the things from a financial standpoint that you want to talk about before the marriage, you know, like I said, I was trying to open the door there with it, and you want to watch their money behaviors. You know, if they're at the casino or gambling 3 and 4 nights a week and so forth, ding, 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 that might be another clue right there as to what their priorities are as it relates to money. You know, if they, you know, work 3 days and take off 4 days out the week, that might be another hint. But let me move forward here. So these are some of the things that you want to look at. Make a list of what assets that you and he are bringing into the marriage, okay? Make a list of what assets, what properties that they are bringing into the marriage. Why is that important? Is because, first of all, what you bring into the marriage, and you might want to write this down because people talk about, you know, this is mine, separate property, community property. And by the way, California is a community property state. There are only 9 community property states in the country and so forth. Some of the states have their own little nuances as it relates to community property. So I encourage you to read up on it if the situation occurs. But let me give you the definition, the real definition, not what somebody said or what somebody heard, which I see all the time. Well, somebody told me, and half the time, or I should say higher, the information is wrong. So here is what is separate property. Separate property is what you bring into the marriage, okay? And that one there, wait till I tell you about the nuance with that. So your separate property is what you bring into the marriage. Separate property is also what you inherit. Even while you are married, you inherited this. Someone left you something in their will. That's your separate property, okay? And thirdly, what you receive as a gift. That one can be tricky too, especially when it comes to engagement rings. Okay, so I'll repeat quickly again, what you bring into the marriage, what you inherit during the marriage, what you inherit during the marriage and what you receive as a gift. All 3 of those are considered your separate property. Because remember, once you jump the broom, what do the vows say? The 2 have become what? 1. Isn't that wonderful? The 2 have become 1. So remember that your income is no longer yours. It's ours. It's community property. What you make is mine. What I make is yours. What we purchase during the marriage is ours. Now, I've been focusing on the asset side, but let's talk about liabilities. Okay, liabilities that are created during the marriage belong to the both of us. Now, you may say, well, okay, that's cool. Okay, we're together. I get that. But let's take it from the outside for a minute. You want to know. That's why I said, in my case, I requested credit reports. Because when you look at what the top 3 reasons why people get a divorce, you don't want to walk into a marriage where, number one, you're going to have to first learn that other person and then walk into financial problems from jump. That's a serious problem. So that being the case, you want to look at how they handle their debts and what debts they have. Because even though those debts they created were prior to the marriage, they are still responsible for it. So let's say, for instance, you all decide, okay, we're married now, we're going to go buy a house, and you're buying a house together. And when they pull the credit reports, they're pulling the credit reports on both of you. And let's say you have an 800 and I have a 300. That's a problem. Ava's laughing a little too hard there. That's a problem. Because obviously I wasn't handling my business right, and that's going to impact us being able to get the loan. What interest rate, what down payment, the whole 9 yards, if we are able to get through it at all. So make sure you know what obligations they have as it relates to credit and all of those things like that. The last one I'll mention, and then I'll move on, as it relates to liabilities or obligations out there, is, okay, especially now that many of us are getting married or married again older, that means one or the other or both are walking into the relationship or walking into the marriage with kids. Okay, what about those obligations, as in child support? Because guess what? When you get married, remember that income, we've become one now. So that can be potentially exposed to child support. Okay? And you can shake your neck all you want, but the two have become one. Okay, so remember that. It cuts both ways. If you bringing in kids, I may be exposed to that. Okay? And one of the newest trends that I'm seeing now is, because traditionally and historically, the mom was the custodial parent. That's no longer the case. That's changing now. There are a lot of dads that are stepping up and becoming the custodial parent, which means what? Mom has to pay child support. Okay? And all of this is federally set up. There are worksheets and guidelines from the federal government on down to the states where you literally plug in each party's incomes and so forth. And it tells you, based upon the number of kids and the amount of income, what the monthly child support obligation should be. And then there are modifications to that subject to lifestyle, which we'll get into later on. So those are a few of the things to think about and talk about before you get married. You got to know what you're getting into, because guess what? Love don't pay the light bill. Her cuteness don't pay the cell phone bill. Okay? So these are real issues that has to be. Thank you, Tiffany, for your support. But that's real. That is absolutely real. You got to have those conversations. And here's the reality of it. If the person is unwilling to have these conversations beforehand, then what are they hiding? Because it's going to be there anyway. It literally cuts equally both ways. So make sure to have those obligations. And lastly, I'll mention and then move on, is make sure their tax returns are up to date. That's a serious one there. You getting into the marriage and find out, oh, well, you know, I haven't paid, filed a tax return since Purple Rain. That's a problem. Okay, Prince can't help you now for obvious reasons, but that's a problem because now you're married. You got this outstanding obligation to the IRS, and guess what? They're coming to get it any way they can. So make sure you understand it and know about those tax returns, and it goes both ways. All right. So let's move on there, because I don't want to stress y'all out too much. So here we go. So now we moved on. We've done the homework beforehand, and we're in wedded bliss. Look at them. Isn't that a lovely couple? I started to have some music for y'all, but you know, we wanted to try to keep it focused there. But look at them. They're in the midst of wedded bliss. And that's a great thing. But let's see how long that lasts. So now we talked about what things you should do before marriage. But now we're in it now, and we're in it to win it, as we say. But what are the conversations? What are the financial conversations? What are the documents that you should keep up with during the marriage? And let me stop here and say this while I'm thinking of it again, particularly as it pertains to divorce, which we're leading to. I want you to keep this in the back of your mind. A lot of the issues that we're going to be talking about that many folks face in divorce are exactly the same issues that spouses, male or female, have to deal with at the death of a spouse. Okay? So keep that in mind. So when we get into that phase of talking about divorce and all those issues there, keep in mind some of these same issues are identical at the loss of a spouse due to death. It's many of the same things. So remember that. So, all right, we're in this wedded bliss here. And the first thing I must say is what? Document, document, document. You got to have documentation. Okay? So what are we talking about? Bank statements. You should know where the bank accounts are. Okay? You should know where they are and how much is in there. All right? Now, I say this, and I say this boldly now because, again, I'm way here in New Orleans, and it would be different if I was in front of y'all in person. But I understand that many of you, and Martina, back me up, as young ladies were taught by your moms growing up, always have your separate stash account in your maiden name. Can I get an amen from somebody on that? Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Mama told you to go and open up that bank account over there just in case. You got that over there in your maiden name. So if you got to make a quick move, see, I'm getting amen, that you have that there. Okay, that may be true. However, something I said earlier, remember I said about separate property and the nuances of it? So let me give you this quick scenario as we move down the list. So let's say, and I'm going to pick on Amanda here since she was making all these faces. I want to see this face now. So let's say you own this home on the day you got married. And let's say, to make the math simple, it was worth $100,000 and you're married. Okay, so 5 years down the road, you're getting divorced. And you say, okay, I got my own house. I'm going back to my house. I said, hold up, wait a minute. That house has appreciated during the marriage. But you say, well, wait a minute, I had this beforehand. That's true, you had it beforehand. So let's say hypothetically, the house is now worth $150,000. Yeah, I know that one too. Never let the right hand know what the left hand is doing, but we gonna uncover that in a few minutes. That's in the chat. But let's say now the 5 years down the road, the house is now worth $150,000. Do you realize that 50,000 of that separate property is community? So that first 100,000, which is what it was worth on the day you got married, is your separate property. But that 50,000 that has grown during the marriage is community, which means that your soon-to-be ex-spouse is entitled to half of that. So that 50, 25 belong to us. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So that's how it works. Now, why am I saying that? Because if you don't have a prenup, this is what happens. Okay. This is what happens when you don't have a prenuptial agreement in place. And again, that's important for folks, as you heard me say earlier, when you are already established to a certain degree and you have assets going in. But if you like Billy Preston going into it, some of y'all know what I'm talking about. See, I'm looking at faces, got a lot of young folks on here. Martina, help me out. What was that song Billy Preston had back in the mid-70s? Let's see if she put it in the chat. His most popular song. I'm gonna help y'all out. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. If we both coming in with nothing, there's no need for a prenup. Okay. So you don't need a prenup if we both just coming in with some slippers and a sock. But if you got a house and other assets, you may need a prenuptial agreement. And this is the reason why, because any amount that accumulates during the marriage is considered community. Same thing, keep that in mind with your 401ks, your retirement plan. Your 401k might be worth $200,000 a day. Okay, from the point you get married to the day you file, that is now a community asset because the two have become one. Okay. And no, you're not going to get the sock because I'm going to slice that in half too. A lot going on in this chat here. I'm trying to keep up. So here you go. So document. So assets, know where those bank accounts are, have those property appraisals. You heard me mention about the 401k, employee benefit statements, okay? Make sure you know the beneficiaries on them. I had a real case life situation in my own family some years ago. One of my cousins worked for the VA, worked there for years, was a career VA person, and divorced, remarried, and died. I don't know if it was necessarily due to the remarriage, but we're gonna leave that alone for now. But remarried and he died. So the second wife went in and said, well, you know, my husband is now, you know, he is deceased. And, you know, I came to collect his retirement benefits. And they said, well, oh, are you Gloria such and such? And she said, well, no, that's the first wife. They said, well, that's who you need to talk to because that's who's getting this money. Because he never went in to update the beneficiary on the retirement plan. Okay, so that's important. And we're going to talk about that later on with wills too. So just because you divorce, that does not change who you have listed as your beneficiary. So keep that in mind. So like I said, the different assets, nothing over there. Okay, so yeah, bye-bye. So yeah, so bank statements, property statements, employee benefit statements, retirement accounts, same thing with the credit cards. You need to know, and it does not matter, well, oh, it's in his name, so I'm not worrying about that. Yeah, tell that to the law department of American Express, see how far that goes, okay? So make sure you know what's going on, because even though you've gotten a divorce, that in no way ends your obligation to those creditors, all right? So have this information in place. And why is this important? Just a few minutes ago, I alluded to this. These same documents you need in the event of the death of a spouse. Too many times a spouse dies, and especially if the remaining spouse was not the one handling the finances, now you already emotionally, you know, in a tizzy right now with the loss of a loved one, and that's totally understandable. But now you're having to make financial decisions, important financial decisions, and you have no clue where any important documents are. That shouldn't be. And especially now when we have all this technology around us. It is too easy to keep up with stuff and make electronic files and so forth. So remember I said earlier, plant that in the back of your mind. Some of these same issues come up with the death of a spouse, just like in divorce. Everybody following so far? So remember here, keep up with that, and the family budget. That is so important. So important. There was a client I worked with, oh goodness, this has been 20 years ago. And it was crazy here. with this, and I'll try to share this story quickly. She took my class, and this will just give you the perspective of some people. This still amazes me, even when I tell the story now. So she was married to this very prominent man. He was a state representative. They in the state of Virginia had a summer home here in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and he was contemplating suicide because his private jet was not as big as his buddies. Now try that one on. He was contemplating suicide because his jet was not as large as the other ones, okay? But what I was getting at besides that craziness was that she had no clue how much it took to run the household, because he basically gave her a shopping allowance every month, and then she went and spent. And then when it was time to trade her in for the new secretary, and you heard me right, because she was the previous secretary, if you get my drift, and she replaced the first wife, and somehow she forgot that that could happen to her too, and it did happen, and she had no clue as it relates to what things cost. Then all of a sudden, when he decided to divorce her for the new one, now she had to get out here in the world and didn't know how to budget and all those things. So it's important. You know, I see someone mention about the insurances, and he never changes. So yeah, you were fortunate there. But yeah, make sure all the insurances are updated, you know, and things like that. You don't want to find out during a crisis situation, that the things are not how you thought they were. So now we've moved past this marital bliss, and there we are. Everybody's on their sides pulling. So we know, of course, the natural emotional issues, and it is tough to make sound decisions and judgments when you're stressed out and things are bitter and spiteful and so forth. But you got to keep a cool head, because there are so many issues that you have to deal with. You have to deal with the divorce, which is the legal aspect of it. Okay, that's the first part. So you could be divorced and never have done the property settlement. You could be divorced and haven't dealt with the child custody issues. They are not all one and the same. Okay. Now, some people try to bundle it up, and again, depending on the complexity or lack thereof of your situation will dictate that. But keep in mind, you get what you pay for. And it is important that you get, especially if you have a lot of assets or you have a complex situation, especially these days with a lot of blended families and so forth, where both parties are bringing kids to the table and so forth. It's important for you to get a qualified divorce lawyer, better known as a family law specialist. You can check with the local bar. You can go online and look specifically for a family law specialist. Yeah, because any lawyer, you can ask them, oh, can you handle a divorce? Yeah, because they can. That's not the question to ask. The question to ask is, what percentage of your practice is devoted to family law? And if they say, I try to do it wrong, you need a family law specialist, someone who is aware of many of these issues that we have here, which I'm going to try to move quickly. There is no more any such thing called alimony. Anybody know what the new terminology is for it? You can put it in the chat. The new term for alimony. And I can tell you that judges now try to minimize issuing this new term as much as possible, particularly now where, and I'm looking at it from a traditional sense, because this is where the courts are coming from, because, traditionally the man worked, the wife stayed at home and so forth. And therefore there was this economic imbalance. And that's where alimony came in to try to make it equitable. That is correct, spousal support. So Joy, you get a gift. Make sure you see the ladies of M.I.S.C. For that, I'm just kidding. You get a virtual gift. There you go. But thank you. That's exactly correct. Spousal support is the proper terminology. And it goes both ways. If you're wondering, oh, that can't be true, ask Mary J. Blige. Okay. When, what's his name, Kenju or something like that was his first name, and he wanted to get spousal support, and he got it. Okay, not as much as he originally wanted, but nevertheless, he got it and he was entitled to it. The law cuts both ways. So it's called spousal support, right? So again, consider, counseling and so forth, because not every situation really has to end in divorce. Sometimes there are misunderstandings and so forth, and you hopefully, hope that it can be worked out. But even if it does go to divorce, it is important for the person to possibly get counseling for them to make that emotional and mental transition, okay, especially if you've been married for a long time. That is very, very important, and so forth. And let's not forget about the kids, because remember, the two of you are divorcing. That has nothing to do with the kids. And please, for whatever you can do, leave them out of the situation. Do not translate messages between the kids. You tell your daddy he's a low down. No, they don't have nothing. Joy, you're laughing too hard there. Do not send those messages between the kids, because at the end of the day, you all are still mom and dad to them. They will never see it through the same lens as you, no matter how good or bad the situation is. Let them make their own decisions for themselves as it relates to how they feel about the other parent. So again, these are the things we're talking about leading up to the divorce. Document, prepare, getting your right professional, perhaps bringing in a divorce financial analyst to calculate. That's where my role has come in when there was an issue of hiding assets, when it is an issue of how much one party or the other was entitled to in retirement benefits and so forth. It's important for you also to have credit in your own name. Being an authorized user on the credit card is not credit in your own name. You need to have your own credit history. Because if you're now going back out on your own and having to go get an apartment or even trying to get insurance now, they want to see your credit history. And they're going to say, well, wait a minute. You're 50 years old and we see nothing of you. Are you a ghost? Did you just appear on this planet? You got to have your own history. So even though you're married, have those things in place there. Okay, make sure you work in lockstep with your attorney. Do not go renegade, do not go rogue, do not go maverick and go say and do your own, well, I'm gonna check him and all of that. No. Stay in your lane, let your attorney do the proper answering, in response, and it keeps it clean, because you might end up saying something that will set you back. Okay. Now, you heard me talk about the wills and all these other documents. It's important. Now, remember, as you're going through the divorce process at that point, you don't have a right to change all these things yet. Okay, so you have to work in lockstep with your attorney to know when's the appropriate time to do it. Okay. And just because the two of you agree to something doesn't necessarily mean the courts are going to accept it. All right. So make sure you understand that. Well, that's what we wanted. So, okay, that's what you wanted. But the court says, the judge says otherwise. And same thing when it comes to your 401k. Let me give you 4 letters there. QDRO. Let me repeat them. QDRO, Qualified Domestic Relations Order. Okay. So when they are determining how much your now soon to be ex-spouse is entitled to your retirement or vice versa, doesn't matter how much you all agree between one another, it still has to be approved, not just by the courts, but by the company. Okay, the company, because if you all agree to some type of provision for the retirement plan of them getting proceeds that they don't offer, the company will say, we're not allowing that. And guess what? The courts can't change that. So when it says it's a qualified, so when your lawyer writes it up, it's a domestic relations order. Once it is accepted, then it becomes a qualified domestic relations order. Now, time doesn't permit me to get into all of that because that's a class all by itself. But just remember that you want to make sure that you get the numbers right and all that. By the way, here's another quick tip. When I was doing my research many years ago in before I was teaching the classes and so forth. Now, listen to this statistic here. The standard of living, and it's changing now, fortunately, but it's still not where it should be. The standard of living 1 year after the divorce was the standard of living for women decreased by 73%, while the standard of living for men increased by 42%. Anybody want to guess why that is? It's because many times the wife made the emotional decisions and took the house. So let's say, for instance, and here's a perfect example. Let's say you got a $400,000 house and he has a $400,000 401k. And you say, well, okay, 400 and 400, that's equal. So I'll take the house. And he said, fine, and I'll keep my $400,000 401k. But look at what you just did. His $400,000 is still appreciating. Your $400,000 house still got property taxes, maintenance, and all those other things. Where's the money going to come from in order to maintain that? And what ends up happening many times is that you fall behind. And sometimes I got to tell you, perhaps we can do another class. I can tell you about the tricks that lawyers do to set the wives up to fall on their faces, and the husband come back and get everything for pennies on the dollar. But we don't have enough time today for all of that. But just because something's equal doesn't necessarily mean that it's equitable. Okay, let me say that quickly again. Just because it's equal doesn't necessarily mean that it's equitable. You heard me mention earlier that there are 9 community property states. Most of the others are equitable distribution. And what really clouds things up today is because folks are doing more cohabitating than getting married. Now, for the folks who have gray hair like me, we used to say shacking up, okay? And that complicates things because here it is, you living like you're married, you're going out and making purchases like you're married, so like a house, but what happens when somebody dies? So here it is, my girlfriend's living with me, we went out and bought a house together, she dies, she has no will, she didn't put me in there as her beneficiary. Guess what? Her half of the house that we bought together goes to her family, not to me. Easy way to fix that, do a will and say, well, this half goes to me. So little things like that come back to haunt folks because either they don't know or don't want to pay to get the right advice, and they end up paying more because of these kind of situations like that. I remember a case of someone in my neighborhood many, many years ago. They bought the house like a couple of months before they got married, and they were young, in their 20s. And unfortunately, the husband died in their 20s, and they hadn't made any provisions for, the house going to her. The house went to his mama, and his mama said, put her out. Now that's kind of cold, but that's what happened. We want the money. That's a real case. That kind of stuff can happen and can be avoided through proper planning. Okay, so remember all of that. The division of assets. We'll talk about, like I said, support issues is based upon income. The court's job is not necessarily to bring you back to the same standard of living. I wish somebody would have told Lionel Richie's second wife that when she said she needed $30,000 a month to do her hair. Like, really? Really? $30,000 a month? Okay. That's why he was doing all them commercials, and he's still doing which one is that he on now? Not America's Got Talent, American Idol. That's why he's still trying to get himself out the hole. But that's true. Y'all go on the internet and look at what she was asking for as it relates to support for the lifestyle that she wanted. And remember, it cuts both ways now. So as you ladies are making good money and being CEOs and all of that, now the husband's gonna be coming in and say, oh, these golf clubs I need new ones every other month, $10,000. So we coming after y'all now and getting all these things. Okay, we don't get our hair done like that. But then again, I don't know, Steve Harvey used to, that's a conversation for another day. I'm gonna leave that alone. So let's move forward with that. All right. So let's quickly, in our remaining time here, and I know time is short, but I just want to cover these things very quickly. Post-divorce healthcare. if you've been covered on your spouse's plan, what do? As we all know, health insurance is expensive and through the roof. Now, under the law, you can go and get COBRA insurance, which allows you up to 3 years to carry coverage through his plan. He doesn't have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. But I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with COBRA before, but it is no joke. I guess that's why they call it COBRA, because it's like a snake. It bites you, but no. COBRA, getting health insurance through COBRA is super expensive, but you do have that as a bridge, if you will, until you are able to transition and get coverage on your own job on your own. Again, time doesn't permit us to get into all of that, but just know COBRA is an option for you, and you need to address that. Now, you know, of course, sitting down and negotiating, I want to talk a little bit about tax planning with you. Both of you cannot carry the kids on the tax return. Now you can if you want to get free room and board, if you know what I'm saying. It's called tax fraud. So you have to decide who's going to carry the children. And that's something that can be negotiated, because let's say if one spouse is in a significantly lower tax bracket, they may not need that deduction or write-off. So you can negotiate that. There's called, through the use of the IRS Form 8332, let me repeat that, IRS Form 8332, the two parents can determine which parent will cover the child, or carry, I should say, the child for that particular tax period. And when the IRS gets the return, because remember, everything is tracked by a social security number, you have to have that form with you. So, oh, okay, they're allowed to carry them. And when they look at yours and say, oh, she don't have no Form 8332, he does. All right, lock up. Okay. Look at Amanda getting nervous. But by the way, there's a reward out for her, so y'all can get paid. I'm just saying. So remember that when you're doing your tax planning, y'all got to negotiate. You just can't say, well, that's my child too. Sit down, work it out. If the two of you can't talk, do it through the attorneys or the financial professional that perhaps you may be working with as it relates to all of those things. Now, here's a little tidbit that some of you may like. Under the Social Security law, if you've been married for 10 years or more, when it comes time for you to receive Social Security benefits, you are entitled to the greater of your own Social Security benefit, half of his, whichever is greater. And if, let's say, for instance, he had a higher paying job than yours, he paid more in the Social Security system, and half of his is more than yours, that does not cut into what he gets. Plus, let's say he goes and gets married again and stays married for 10 years and divorced. I was going to say like the orange man, but normally he doesn't stay married for 10 years. Y'all know who I'm talking about. But let's say if they got married for 10 years, then the second wife can get half the Social Security benefit, and so on and so on. Now you understand part of the reason why the Social Security system is in financial trouble, because you got more people draining out the system than who even contributed. But that can be a benefit for you and can help you as it relates to qualifying for Medicare coverage, okay? Especially for teachers, you know, in many cases who don't contribute into the Social Security system, you can still qualify for Medicare through your now ex-spouse. And again, so research that, look it up, because time doesn't permit us to get into that now. But these are all critical things that you want to discuss. So with that being said, I know time is short. Perhaps the ladies of M.I.S.C will allow us maybe 5 or 10 minutes to open up the floor to some questions. And Amanda, if you can bring us into the classroom, that would be great. Let me stop sharing here so you can do that. You remember where to get to it? Up in the view? There we go. So we're all in class now. Anybody have questions? I know that's a lot of stuff to throw at you. You can come on live now from behind your photos and stuff like that. But anybody have any questions on what I covered or what they heard or what they thought, so we can make sure you have the right information? Anybody?
Common law.
Common law. Okay, and I kind of referred to that earlier. That can be a tricky situation. You have to really look at it in your state as it relates to what rights you have, because I believe in California, and don't hold me to this, after so many years of the two people being together, the law treats them as if they were really legally married. And then if that is the case, then a lot of these things that we just talked about apply. Okay, so
Okay.
the thing is, you really want to know for sure what's going on. So just because we live in against, oh, well, they can't get married, that's not necessarily true. You have to look at what the laws are in your particular state, because like I said, after a certain period of time, they treat you as if you were married. There are, and I forget who it was, but this has happened on multiple occasions with some celebrities that have done that. I mean, you look at Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, they've been together now like for 30 years or whatever, if not more, and they've never gotten married. But as far as the law is concerned now, and all the things that they've brought together, unless they had a prenup and so forth, they're treated as if they jumped a broom. So I hope that helped, but definitely do your homework on that. Okay, I see a question here. What about independent stocks and stock options bought before marriage and during, and no prenup? Okay, so like I said earlier, what you brought into the marriage is yours and the value it was. So let's say all this outstanding, let's say you had $1 million on the day you got married, and that's what it was worth. Fine, that's yours. And let's say you still have that account. Now, mind you, and while I'm thinking of it, let's say you had a house, rental property, okay? What's very important is that you keep those assets and the income from it separate, because let's say you get rental income, you get a check from that rental property, and now you deposit it into the family joint account. You've just made a gift to the community, okay? Yes, you did. You made a gift to the community. So you got to be very careful of that. Folks got, somebody's falling out the chair there. So yeah, and the rules are the same for same-sex marriages, because now there's no reason why they should not have the same pain as everybody else. So the rules are the same for same-sex marriages on that question. So yeah, so back to that question of the stock beforehand, if it was worth $1 million on the day of marriage, and then here we are 3 years down the road, we're getting a divorce, but now it's worth $1.3 million. That extra $300,000 is on the table. And that could be considered community property, because that grew during the marriage, which means I may be entitled to half of that, the other party. So I hope that helps. That's why a prenup is important. If there's no prenup, then you may have some issues. Okay, so I hope that helps there. Any other questions on that? There's a lot of moving parts, and there's so much bad information in our community and so forth. Okay, somebody said, well, if they don't know. Well, let me tell you, those of you who really know me know I got stories for everything. I was hired to work on a case in 1995 during the OJ trial. I'll never forget it. That's how I remember, of folks who got divorced in 1972. And he lied and said that he had included the retirement plan in the divorce. Well, first of all, you can't lie about something like that, because the first thing you do is go to the court document and see if it was included in there. And if it's not in there, well, boom, busted, it wasn't. And so he was busted on that part. Said, oh, it was an oversight. So, okay, well, I'll pay her the value it was in 1972. Now, all of you know that dog don't hunt, because here it is now, 1995, and he's trying to pay her on the value of it in 1972. So we had to go to court because they couldn't come to any agreement. I was hired as an expert on her side. They got this professor from LSU on her side. And any of you who saw the movie My Cousin Vinny, when they went to court and all of that craziness, some of that craziness I went through in there. Next time I'll tell y'all the story on it. It was crazy. But anyway, to make a long story short, the husband lost, my side won, the judge sided with my calculations and so forth, because there is precedent in previous court cases as to the valuations and so forth. Brought all of that, did the calculations, and boom, as opposed to paying her $72 a month, which is what he wanted to pay her, she ended up getting about $1,000 a month. Big difference. So yeah, Jess, so ignorance, what do they say all the time? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So just because you got away with it right now doesn't mean you've gotten away scot-free, because all it takes is one of them to come take one of my classes and say, oh, okay, boom, and go back. And I've seen that happen. That is true. Any other quick questions there? And the thing is, I'll add this quickly to it. You don't want to have that kind of lingering over your shoulder, because as Murphy's Law goes, you know, things come up at the most inopportune time. So you may have moved on with your life, new family, new spouse, and boom, this person comes in and says, oh, you didn't take care of this back then. I want mine. And if they got the proof to substantiate it, you got to give them what they're entitled to. And like I said, it cuts both ways. So it's best. That's why I presented it the way I did, in saying from the beginning, do what? Document, document, document. Keep your documents. Have them. You should have these things anyway. And because of death, you should have these documents. Because of catastrophes. For y'all, it's earthquakes and all of that kind of stuff. For us, it's hurricanes or what have you. You need all of these documents in the event something happens. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this. We're still dealing with it. COVID exposed a lot of this, where folks were grossly unprepared, not having medical directives, not having wills. You're not able to go into the hospital to be with them. You're not able to go there and make those decisions. Whereas if all of these things were in place, then you don't have to make these kind of tough choices, you know, at a highly emotional time and so forth. Have your ducks in a row beforehand, because leaving this earth is not a question of if, it's a question of when. So it's best to be prepared. Any final question on that?
No, that's good. I mean,
If
just
there are
FYI.
none,
Yeah.
there are none. I want to thank all of you, as always. Thank the ladies of M.I.S.C for hosting this. You know, I really take my hat off to you all for taking the time to do this, because this is really, really important. And unfortunately, not enough time, especially in our community, is devoted to providing, as I like to call it, safe space, if you will, to talk about important financial issues in a way that's educational, and not somebody trying to hit us over the head and sell us something, this, that, and the other. And so forth. In 1969, no, I was too young to help you out. Way too young. I'm not going to say how young, but too young. Somebody else might comment and say something, so I'm going to leave that alone. But you're
I'm
welcome.
not going to say nothing.
The floor is yours. Thank you all again for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And this this session is recorded. We'll be publishing it on our YouTube channel as well, in case you know anybody that may benefit from the discussion of what they need to be prepared for in the beginning. You know, if they're thinking about getting married, or you know, are married, or even thinking about you know, unfortunately with divorce. So it kind of speaks to, you know, those 3 points, you know, from the beginning, present, and then, you know, unfortunately, if there is an end. So we'll be posting the link soon to our YouTube, and just feel free to share and support, and make sure you follow us on social media for any other upcoming events that we have as well.
One quick thing, and I forgot, if any of you want to get information from me, or we do have some stuff on our website pertaining to this, you can go to www.twaconnect.com. And on there, it will provide you a host of different ways to connect with us. You can get to our Twitter page, you can get to our website, you can download my electronic business card, but all of those resources are there. So I invite you and encourage you to take advantage of the wealth of resources that we have online through the website, Twitter, Facebook. On our Facebook page, we do post there literally every week on a variety of financial topics. So if you want to be kept up to date with it, send me your information, name and email. We'll put you on the list, or you can visit our site on your own and take advantage. And we have videos on there as well. www.twaconnect.com.
All righty. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of your evening. You could have been anywhere, but you were here, and we appreciate you. And have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.